This video was brought to you by Brilliant. Today, tensions heat up ahead of Venezuela's crucial election, the US ends its Gaza Pier project, and Joe Biden says that he'd consider withdrawing if a medical condition emerged. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Thursday the 18th of July, 2024. With Venezuela's presidential election rapidly approaching and in an increasingly desperate effort to secure re-election, President Nicolas Maduro has said at a campaign event if they do not want Venezuela to fall into a bloodbath, into a fratricidal civil war, then he and his ruling party must win the election. Maduro's comments come as the United States raises concerns about recent arrests of opposition figures in Venezuela. With just over a week until the July 28th election, early on Wednesday morning, the security chief of opposition figurehead Maria Corina Machado was arrested, raising fears that the country will not see a fair contest. For context, Nicolas Maduro is seeking a third term in office, having presided over an increasingly authoritarian regime since 2013, and being re-elected in a 2018 election that was dismissed as a sham by the Venezuelan opposition, which had largely boycotted it, and also by Western governments. This year's election may well be Maduro's toughest electoral challenge yet, with polling suggesting that the opposition has a good chance of unseating Maduro, presuming the election is free and fair. There were hopes that it could be a relatively open contest after the Venezuelan and US governments struck a deal last year that saw the US ease its sanctions on Venezuela in exchange for commitments to hold free and fair elections. However, the US has since reapplied sanctions, accusing the Venezuelan regime of reneging on its promises by barring candidates and detaining political actors and members of civil society. In fact, Venezuelan authorities barred popular opposition figure Maria Corina Machado from running, despite her overwhelmingly winning the opposition's primary election. So in her place has stepped retired diplomat Edmundo Gonzalez, endorsed by Machado to become the main opposition candidate. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, Gonzalez leads President Maduro by around 20 percentage points in most independent polls, though some report that the gap has shrunk since December. In any case, a huge amount is at stake here. Venezuela's economy is in a dire state. Years of economic mismanagement, corruption, and crushing sanctions have seen Venezuela's GDP shrink by roughly 3/4. More than 80% of Venezuelans live in poverty, and nearly 8 million people have left Venezuela, roughly a fifth of the population, since Maduro took office in 2013. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Alec Guthrie, then consider joining the new TLDR membership program for just $1.99. The pier built by the US military to help bring aid into Gaza will be dismantled and returned home, bringing an end to its short-lived and troubled mission. President Biden had announced the plans to build the $230 million pier back in March. Some 1,000 US forces were involved in its construction, and aid began entering Gaza via the pier in May. But repeated bad weather and security concerns meant that the amount of aid entering was pretty limited. In fact, since its installation on May 16th, it operated for fewer than 25 days, and aid agencies reportedly only used it about half of the time due to security concerns. When the plan was originally announced, aid groups criticized it, calling it a distraction, and said that a more effective strategy would have been for the US to put more pressure on Israel to open up land crossings into Gaza, as well as lifting its restrictions on aid flows into the devastated Strip. Nonetheless, the US military had claimed that the unprecedented operation was a success, and says that a new phase will see millions of pounds of aid enter Gaza via the Israeli port of Ashdod. However, it still remains unclear how much and how easily aid arriving at Ashdod will actually make it across the border into Gaza. Sticking with US-related news for now, President Biden says that he'd reevaluate his candidacy if he was diagnosed with a medical condition, amid ongoing calls for Biden to drop out of the presidential race. BET News interviewer Ed Gordon asked the president if anything would make him change his mind, to which Biden responded, "If I had some medical condition emerged, if doctors came to me and said, 'You've got this problem, that problem.'" Now, it's notable as this is the first time that Biden has signaled that he could end his candidacy for health-related reasons. Previously, he said that only the Lord Almighty could get him to drop out, though last week he conceded that he would step aside if his aides proved that there was no way he could win re-election. Now, Biden maintains that he's in good health, pointing to his latest annual physical and neurological evaluation in February, after which the White House physician said that he was a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the president. Nevertheless, efforts within the Democratic Party to get Biden to withdraw are ongoing, with party heavyweight Nancy Pelosi seemingly leading the charge, and pressure is ramping up on the president. Separately, Biden tested positive for COVID on Wednesday, with mild symptoms, prompting him to cancel some upcoming campaign events. Next up, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed more than 45 European leaders at Blenheim Palace today for a meeting of the European political community. The EPC is the brainchild of French President Emmanuel Macron and brings together EU and non-EU leaders from right across the European continent, though not from Russia and Belarus. For Keir Starmer, the summit being hosted in the UK for the first time could not have come at a better time. Having recently returned from the NATO summit in Washington, D.C., the European political community provides Starmer another opportunity, just weeks into his premiership, to meet and talk with fellow world leaders, as well as providing a chance to reset relations between the UK and EU after some difficult years under various Conservative prime ministers. A Downing Street press release ahead of today's event said that the UK government will use the summit to discuss closer collaboration to tackle illegal immigration and greater security cooperation with European counterparts to keep Britain safe. But a couple of years after its formation, some are sceptical of the EPC as a vehicle for change. It lacks a formal structure, doesn't have any permanent staff, and is seen by its critics as a talking shop with only limited deliverables. And finally, in some uplifting news today, same-sex couples in South Korea are celebrating a landmark decision by the country's Supreme Court that ruled that a same-sex partner is eligible for spousal benefits from state health insurance. The court upheld a previous decision from the Seoul High Court, saying that denying said benefits to same-sex couples constituted discrimination based on sexual orientation. Rights activists hope that this decision could eventually pave the way for legalizing same-sex marriage, as it marks the first effective legal recognition of same-sex partnerships in South Korea. It's interesting that even as people ostensibly into politics, the TLDR team spends more and more time analysing data and economic information as it becomes increasingly critical. But as a bunch of people who are ordinarily more focused on words than numbers, we've really benefited from courses on brilliant.org in order to keep ourselves sharp. That's because Brilliant is the best way to learn maths and computer science in a fun and interactive way. From foundational and advanced maths to AI, data science, neural networks, decision making, and more, with new lessons added monthly. Even if you, like us, don't necessarily think of yourself as a traditionally STEM kind of person, these courses could prove incredibly useful for your life and career. In fact, Brilliant recently launched a ton of new content in data, all of which uses real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions. When it comes to our work, courses like these can help us to parse and visualize massive datasets and make them easier for both us and you to interpret. Plus, these new courses include real-life datasets from sources like Starbucks, X, and Spotify in order to bring the learning to life. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/TLDR or click the link in the description. Plus, by doing so, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video.